Hey everybody, and welcome to the Plant Stock channel. You're here with me in Mayur. Today we thought we were going to talk about Oatly and that maybe shorters should beware when it comes to shorting Oatly stock, right? First, as always, disclosure that whatever me and Mayur talks about is just two friends talking about stocks we're interested in. It's not financial advice. So just keep that in mind as we move along. All right, so how you doing today?
Hey, pretty good.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
feeling a lot better now
yeah. So
about our plant stocks. So,
yeah, a lot of things are actually looking up at the moment.
mhm.
So, but you contacted me the other day, and you were interested in discussing what's going on now with these short attacks when it comes to Oatly. So, do you actually know? Because it's actually hard to find out what I mean. If you look at Seeking Alpha and Yahoo Finance, it says that it's only about 7 or 8% that actually are shorting this stock. But my understanding that's not really correct because it has to do with how many of the stocks are actually available.
Mhm. Yeah, it's this is the thing with Beyond Meat and Oatly as well. It's been the target of short sellers for some time now. And so I'll start off with the positives from about the short sellers, right? I really believe that short sellers play a really good important role in disseminating information and just bringing debate, right? Because everyone is always like, "Oh, these stocks are all going to the moon," we're all going to be rich in a year, right? Get rich quick overnight.
Yeah,
And short sellers come in and say, "Hey, not so fast," right? There's some real issues that we see here. So it balances the debate a little bit and brings things back to reality. So it challenges us to rethink what we think is true and go back and verify whether what we think is true is actually true. So that's why I think, short sellers do play an important role in financial markets, right? However, I think the ones that have been attacking Oatly, if you see the CNBC interview, they and the short report that came out before that,
yeah, Spruce
they
Point.
were based Spruce Point, yeah,
Yeah.
Spruce Point Capital. They were alleging that Oatly was fabricating some of their revenue, right? And that's a serious allegation because that is accounting fraud,
Yeah.
right? But then if you saw his appearance on CNBC, Andrew Ross Sorkin pressed him on that, and he said, hey, why don't you tell us more about this? Like, what's your what evidence you see that Oatly is fabricating revenue? And he went on to say all these other things like Oatly is greenwashing themselves. They're projecting themselves to be a green, environmentally friendly company when they're not really doing that.
Yeah.
They are losing market share. They're, losing production. They're not, producing quick enough. That's quite different from accounting fraud. So he danced around the issue, right? He clearly says that in the report, and so Andrew Ross Sorkin asks him this, and he doesn't answer the question. He talks about falling market share. I mean, even if they were losing market share, that's different from accounting fraud, right? That's different from fabricating revenue. And you can easily verify this from their cash flow statement, right?
Yeah.
This is something that he didn't talk about either. But if you are fabricating revenue, what would happen is your cash flow statement would not jive with what you see on the income statement. So you would see a massive, buildup in working capital, and therefore you would see operating cash flow that's substantially less than their net income,
Yeah.
and we're not seeing that. So I don't really know where he's coming up with fabricating sales from, but clearly it wasn't big enough for him to actually spend the time on air when they were on CNBC to talk about it. So he deflected to other things like losing market share and things like that.
Exactly. But has
So
there been
I
any
just think that
new?
this is a disingenuous, report, at least on some counts.
Yeah. It's like 100. What was it like 130 page report too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, he was right. They were actually right about the fact that this is a company that really should not be trading at a insane market cap like it
Yeah,
did last year.
yeah,
And I agree with him on that. That's why I was sitting on the sidelines just watching this play out. I
exactly.
didn't want to take part in Oatly at $15 to $20 a share, because I just don't think it's worth that much. We all lived through a crazy bubble market where everything appeared to be cheap just by it going down 20% or so. No, these are multiples that we have never seen in my entire adult life. And last time we saw multiples like this, I was in barely in high school. So um, it's just we all lived through a time where we all became conditioned into thinking that, oh, great companies, these guys are going to change the world. They're creating a better future, and that's true. But that doesn't mean that you just pay any price for the shares
No, exactly.
as an investor.
So when it comes to who is actually right now in the last half year or so, or lately, who is actually doing the shorting? I mean, is it only retailers or is it institutional? What you've seen?
It's Yeah, it's mostly institutional. I don't see retail being a big force behind shorting the stock.
Yeah,
Maybe a few individuals who are like larger and kind of act like institutions in terms of their investment strategy and the research that they follow.
yeah,
But I think it's mostly these types of firms like hedge funds, like Spruce Point, and things like that that are doing this.
yeah. So basically, again, hedge funds.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
and I think I know we've talked about this on the channel, and I've made some videos about this. That we know that it's kind of common practice to some extent that when hedge funds, when they really need to make money, when they need to make ends meet, and they want to reach bonuses, these hedge fund managers and so on. I mean, they'll almost basically they'll fabricate things as long as they can't be proven wrong. They'll
Hmm.
basically say anything in their reports just to get the stock moving. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a video about that on the channel almost a year ago where Jim Cramer openly talked about this in a hidden interview, which he didn't think would actually come out 15 years later. And we talked about that regarding Tesla also. So this is common practice, and it's really interesting. And Mike in the Discord, who is Swedish and has been doing this for 30 years, he said in Sweden this wouldn't happen. This wouldn't be legal, but apparently in the U.S., if you can get away with it, you'll do it.
It's legal. And now it's funny because the SEC is actually starting to crack down on some of this. So there's another short seller called Citron Research. They got raided by the SEC.
Oh,
So Andrew Left, which is, he's the outspoken short seller. He comes on CNBC all the time. He had to turn over his laptop to the government.
that's a bad
so,
sign.
so it's like, now, like, look, I don't want to like shut down short sellers. I think they should definitely speak up because sometimes short sellers are correct.
Yeah.
There are cases of fraud, so we don't want to mute their voices. It's a free world. We should allow people to speak up. But what that does is that it'll actually make you better. It'll make you a better investor too. By the way, because I lived through this with Tesla, right? And the voices of the short sellers of the Tesla Q community were deafening loud. They were very loud, very vocal, very organized on Twitter, very just they had, a megaphone at one point.
And that makes you examine your thesis like for real.
Exactly.
Mm,
Exactly.
definitely.
Yeah.
Uh,
So it makes you, yeah, it just constantly challenges you to think critically to make sure that what you believe is actually showing up in the data. So
yeah,
it forces us to be data driven.
yeah.
So that's why I think short sellers are great. They help you become a better investor in a
And
way.
another thing, actually, when it comes to like Kathy Wood has been saying about Tesla for years, that she doesn't agree with Elon Musk when it comes to short sellers. That it's actually good for long-term investors because we get these amazing prices. I mean, look at Oatly, $5 at the moment, right? and it's been under 5. What an amazing opportunity for a company that basically could 5 to 10x in, I don't know, the next decade,
Yeah,
and especially from these prices.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I think it's a great opportunity now. So that's why, Spruce Point, they may have, been a little bit, they definitely exaggerated on a lot of parts of their report.
Mm,
But their core thesis ended up coming up to be true, which is that the stock is overvalued.
yeah.
And so they were short at $20 a share,
Mm,
and that was a phenomenal short,
yeah.
right? But the thing is that I think they, ended up doing well because the macro environment moved in their direction, in their favor.
Yeah.
So this is not Oatly specific or any of these other stocks that they specifically target, right?
Yeah.
Teledoc is down 80% from the highs, right? Square down 50%. Shopify, the largest Canadian company, down 40% from the highs. So it's market wide for all companies that were exciting companies that are growing quickly. They all achieved stratospheric valuations, and now that the Fed is finally starting to raise interest rates, right? That party is coming to an end, and now the ones that actually are serious long term growers, they're the ones that will do well,
Yeah.
and the other ones will just fade away into nothing.
And that's why it takes us to the next point here when it comes to the similar paths as Monster Inc. Right? When it comes to that, it's one thing if you're a shorter from a hedge fund that you're actually doing this because you know exactly what you're doing. You're just doing this to make fast money. You don't care about the future. You actually don't care about the product or the. You're just caring about making money now. But there are probably plenty of shorters out there who actually feel like that. Well, this isn't a good company, obviously, and
Yeah,
maybe they can't see the path when it comes to a typical 100 bagger like Monster. And I
yeah,
thought you wanted to share some info on that.
yeah. So that's why it's great. Because here, let me share my screen here. I love. This is why I love. You know, I always bring this comparison between Oatly and Monster, only just because it's the closest example I can think of that has a similar sort of appeal,
Mm.
which is that Monster, they've been around for a long time. You can see this chart right here. It's showing the enterprise value to sales multiple that Monster went through. They essentially invented the energy drink category. So you can kind of say the same thing with the Oatly because they were the first to make milk out of oats, right? So Oatly and Monster have that in common. And for years and years, Monster didn't really do much. They were once, they didn't always have the name Monster, by the way. It was another company, a name that I forgot.
Henriksen something Henderson.
Something like that. Yeah. And then they had new leadership come in and they completely rebranded themselves. They went viral in marketing. It's very very similar to what happened with Oatly after Tony was brought in. Complete rebranding, complete re-strategy. Just reinventing themselves. And that's what Monster went through as well in the late 1990s.
Oh,
Um,
Hansen's Natural Corporation. Yeah.
yes, there you go. Yep. And so Monster went through that sort of restructuring internally, and you can see that around 2003 is really when their sales started to take off because they finally got through production issues. They finally figured themselves out and got their act together. And that's when you can see that the multiple started to expand quite dramatically. So it hit a low in terms of their enterprise value to sales multiple of somewhere, below one. It was like, 0.38. This was well before they started growing quickly, though.
Wow.
Once they started to come onto the map and started to grow quickly, they quickly achieved a EV to sales multiple of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 10 times. It crashed down, during the Great Recession of 2008, right? That was the huge financial crisis.
Yeah.
It
Like
got back down to
everyone
about
else.
2 times sales. Yeah, but you can see that over this entire cycle, the median, enterprise value to sales multiple was around 4.5 times.
It's actually where they are, where Oatly is at right now. It's 4.53.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. And well, according to our calculation, it's closer to four.
Okay.
So you can see Oatly, because Oatly doesn't have so much trading history, so you don't really see a chart of Oatly here.
No.
But you can see what the current number is. That's four, basically four times.
Yeah.
So now is finally a time where Oatly is trading at a reasonable multiple, where a comparable company that went through very hyper growth, hyper adoption, viral marketing, viral branding, um, also traded at. So, I like to look at these two in comparison. Now, Monster does have better gross margins than Oatly, but Monster's gross margins are basically where Oatly is aiming to be. So
40%.
Monsters, and that's 40%, right? So that's based on, what Oatly has been guiding for quite a while now, 40% gross margins. And look at where Monster, has basically was at during that entire time when they grew, right around that, it hit a low of 30%, and grew that to about 50%. So yes, Monster definitely has a higher gross margin than Oatly, and that's probably always going to be the case because
Chemicals.
Monster is
Yeah.
just basically chemicals that can be mass produced, and it has a much longer shelf life, things like that. But it still went through that 40% gross margin phase when they traded at 5 or 6 times revenue. So when Oatly gets to that 40%, and if they can continue to grow the revenue base to 2 billion, $3 billion, this is going to be a very, very good return on your investment, I think,
Yeah.
now
So
that the valuation concern has been removed.
exactly. And
Yeah.
then considering also if it's around a PS of 4, multiple of 4 right now, and then the future, looking at the future of the end of the year, where they're supposed to be closer to 1 billion, right? Around 900. And I wouldn't be surprised if they actually reached 1 billion in revenue. I mean, that multiple would be even better, of course. Must be then around 3.5 or closer to 3.
Yeah, yeah. If they can exceed their guidance, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So, I guess they're still working through issues with Ogden. Um, and I gotta say, like the U.S. And I posted this on our Discord channel, but I really think that the U.S. and Asia are their two huge, their biggest opportunities.
Yeah.
Um, because currently in the U.S., almond milk is still the number one market share within plant-based milks. That is a huge opportunity for Oatly to take over, because it's already happened throughout Europe, and we can see that in the in on this slide right here, where in Sweden, oat milk already dominates 78% market share in Sweden. Oatly went from being behind to now dominating in the UK. Same thing in Germany. And you can see that the same thing is currently underway in the US, but with substantial upside left to go. So I think that trend should continue. So that's a huge sort of potential of further growth
Yeah.
for Oatly.
Yeah, and we shouldn't forget there
And
was just an article that in the US, about 16% of the total, 16 of the total milk that people drink is plant based in the US.
yeah,
So
yep,
that's a really good step in the right direction.
exactly. Yeah, and you can see that within by market share, right? They've taken the number one spot in all these countries, number two in the U.S. If they can get this Ogden facility up and running, as well as the New Jersey facility, um, I don't see why. I think there's really nothing stopping them from becoming number one in market share in the U.S. as well. So it's all about supply at this point, because
Yeah.
I still see, even today, when I go to the supermarket, I don't. Often see the Oatly section completely empty, and everybody else is supplied. So there is some supply production issues that they're still working through.
Right.
I hope they can resolve that quickly, because the quicker they do that, um, the quicker that they can drive the adoption on this chart right here. Because we see that on the next slide, it says very clearly, this data is actually really good, that Oatly drives the category. So when we talk about oat milk dominating market share, it's really Oatly that's contributing to a significant portion of that.
Yeah. So
Um,
so considering all of this, if we go back to the stock, then do you think it's possible that we could see a short squeeze here, like with time,
um,
or is it
yeah,
actually even something we would want?
yeah, no, I don't see that, because it's gonna unwind slowly.
Mm.
Because remember, they're still guiding for somewhat of a weak Q1 as well. So, remember, a short squeeze only occurs when there is a significant surprise that comes up. Like there has to be a quarter where everybody was expecting a massive loss as usual, and they turn around and just surprise shock everyone with the profit, you know. Or something has to happen, like an activist has to get involved and take a huge long position, or someone that wants to drive growth for the company again, or someone that wants to something has to there has to be a significant event for there to be a short squeeze that gets triggered.
Yeah. So
And because we still see ongoing issues in Q1, because they talked about this on the call, that they still see further weakness in their gross margins in Q1. So gross margins have been under pressure a lot lately because of inflation, and they even have a slide that's kind of dedicated to that on here. But I think inflation, the shipping costs, things like that, are still going to be around for a while. And so the biggest part of that is their startup expenses for Ogden. So if they can get past that, but it's going to take another quarter or so to do that,
yeah.
according to both Tony and Christian. So I don't see a short squeeze on the horizon.
All right, but I think personally, when you think about it, for us who are long-term investors and don't need to take out our money anytime soon, sad for those who might, but we don't know. We don't know the. I mean, what could happen in the next couple of months? It could still get a run, but you had a Bloom article you wanted to discuss regarding this whole, when it comes to dairy and what is going on with the dairy.
Yeah. So I just had this. This is a Bloomberg article that was just released this morning, and the days of cheap milk are over. This is coming from Arla, right? Arla is the
In Sweden,
biggest. Are they the biggest in Sweden?
yeah, they're the
Oh
biggest.
wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
So they're also huge in the UK. I believe they're the largest brand in the UK as well.
yeah.
So it seems like, yeah, it's a multinational dairy company giant. And so here's one thing. So the days of cheap milk are over, they say, right? And the reason why this is really important is because we see this happening all throughout industries. Gas prices are high, petrol prices are high, everything is high, right? So of course milk is going to be high too. So people might, dismiss that as just something that is temporary while we're working through all this.
Yeah.
But here's the key. If you dig into the article, there's one statement that really caught my eye here. I'm trying to find it now. Where was it? It was something about playing out over 5 years.
Let's see if I can see it.
Let's see if I can search that.
Yeah, yeah, I see it on the second page on the top here. On the second page on the top, Arla's 5-year strategy.
Yeah, so there's a 5 year strategy, and then man, I'm trying to find it where I saw it, where he said that your rising prices are going to start happening, um, not just for the short term, but for like the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Oh, right here. It could take some time for costs to be passed through to shoppers, he said, but over the next 5 years, things are likely to change. If you look at what we're paying our farmers today, we're paying over 30% more than we were a year ago. They need it. Milk production is still dropping, he said. Arla's 5 year strategy could see it become the first dairy to export milk at scale out of the UK to tap into higher milk prices abroad.
Yeah.
So he believes that this milk and price inflation is going to play out not just for the next year or so, but for the next 5 years.
And that's the
So
And that's the interesting thing because I've been talking, just been a little concerned regarding Oatly and other plant based companies like Beyond Meat, also, that we could see, like when inflation gets worse, then we could see these premium products becoming even more expensive. And that's worried me because then during that time, people might really not go buy these products. But then I hadn't factored in that meat and dairy is not only going to get more expensive too, but might actually get even more expensive, which actually gets these products even closer to each other. Considering that
yeah,
I'm thinking that we're sooner or later all these kinds of subsidies might actually get lowered, more and more lowered, as we have in some countries here in the north.
yeah, the subsidies, that's harder because farmers still get the benefit of politicians from either party. So it'll be hard to see subsidies going away for them anytime soon. But I think it's clear that the consumer is moving away from dairy milk.
Yeah.
We see this trend right here. This is through 2019. I took this from the CNBC video on Oatly, and cow's milk used to be 16 billion in the U.S. In 2015. That's now reduced to 12 billion as of 2019. And I found some additional data from Statista, um, where total sales have declined even further. Um,
Well,
so we saw a big bump in 2020. Again, the COVID bump, really pushed everything up. But now we see milk sales continuing that long term decline. So it's down to about 40 billion pounds of milk sales in 2021. Down from 42.3 in 2019. So this is a secular decline, I think, in dairy milk sales. So this is now an opportunity for plant-based milks to come up.
yeah,
That's exactly what's happening with Oatly here. Um, so if this is true, if Arla CEO is correct that milk prices are going to go up, then I think at the margin that's only going to accelerate this decline. Because as Oatly then achieves closer. Now, Oatly also has said that they are going to raise prices too, so maybe some of that benefit is offset. That's why I'm such a huge fan of the idea of hitting cost parity with milk. I really wish we got that from Oatly,
yeah,
but it makes sense for now, since there's still a production constraint, just like Tesla is.
yeah.
So maybe lower prices for now doesn't make much sense,
But like
but
we
I think
saw
long
in,
term,
yeah, like we saw in the video that I had my friend interviewing some of the communication people from Oatly, basically stating in a couple of years they actually seem to have some ideas or a plan that sooner or later reaching some form of price parity.
I would love that. I
Mm,
would absolutely love that. That would make me even more bullish than I am right now on
right.
Oatly. So milk is in trouble. This is a vulnerable trend right here.
Mm,
And if they're hiking prices amidst falling sales, I don't think that's only going to make this decline even faster. So whoever can capitalize on that and provide a delicious alternative to dairy milk, um, without without being significantly more expensive, is going to win. And oat milk, I think, is the perfect plant-based milk to do it because of its versatility, because of its taste, because of its familiarity with among people. Right? Everyone knows what oats are. Um, it's not a hard sell. This is the advantage that Oatly has over Beyond Meat. Right? It's very easy to convince people to try oat milk. It's a lot harder to get people to try plant-based meats.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's very much now. At the same token, though, there's a lot more competition for Oatly. Though I still believe that Oatly does have the best product overall versus others. So that's what's I think ultimately going to mean why they succeed. But I just hope that the price increases don't last too long. I hope they can come back down very quickly so that this trend can be really capitalized to Oatly's advantage.
Exactly. All right. But yeah, that's basically what we had today, guys. And we would love to talk more with you guys, but a bit short in time. As always, join us in our free Discord channel down in the description, where we talk more about this, and you get to meet Mayur, who's quite active there, and we have other. We have Mike from Sweden, who's been invested in Oatly for over 10 years with a huge sum, who has been following them, basically for 10 years and buying products like me for like 15 years. So join us and talk about these and talk about Beyond Meat, talk about Tattoo Chef, very good food company to name a few guys. All right, but thank you, Mayur, for today, and we'll see what we can bring you guys next Friday. All right, guys,
Sounds good.
thank you. Bye.